Hello, today my group mates and I, me, Tracy, Alamido, and also Philia, will be presenting on the element of marriage, comparison between the Ugandan and St. Thomas Christian culture in terms of traditions, values, and stereotypes. The information collected are from journals, books, videos, personal conversations with parents, and also an online interview was conducted with Elisha Bukenya, who is from Uganda, to learn more about the Ugandan marriage traditions. So, what is marriage? Marriage is a universal cultural phenomenon that takes place in all cultures. However, the definition varies across culture because of the difference in customs, beliefs, and also practice. If there was a universal definition to be given to the term marriage, Vimala Sena's 2016 Vimala Sena's 2016 suggested to follow the definition by Prince Peter, which is joining of man and woman, thereby being partners with mutual rights and obligations, and reproducing legitimate children within the marriage union. However, there are some disagreements on this definition because, according to George et al. 2014, it's mentioned that there are different forms of marriage. So, for example, there is not only man and woman, but also man, woman, and also men with multiple women, which is polygamy, and also women with multiple men, which is polyandry. So, because of all these different definitions of marriage, today we'll be only focusing on marriage in the St. Thomas Christian culture and also the Ugandan culture. So, the St. Thomas Christian community or the Syrian Christian community's origin is traced to AD 52, and they have adapted some of the cultural customs of the Indian community that has been Christianized. And besides that, they have brought forward into the Syrian Christian practice of some of the traditions and also values of the Indian culture. So, in the St. Thomas Christian culture, holy matrimony is one of the seven sacraments of the church, and it is only to be held in the church. It is defined as the union between man and woman, and also symbolizing the union between Christ and the church, whereby the relationship is not just a contract but a pledge taken in God's presence, Metropolitan 2013. Besides that, the minister of the marriage is the priest, or it will be the priest or the bishop. And when the hands of the man and woman are joined by the priest will read the grace of family life is received from this. Marriage is only celebrated for those who intend to get into it, to enter into it, and it's not for everyone. So, in short, this is how marriage is defined in the St. Thomas Christian culture. For the Ugandan culture, in the Ugandan community, marriage is a significant social custom. It's a means whereby families, lineage, and also clans are united. However, because of this reason, you can't conceptualize marriage for all communities because of the different forms and processes. Therefore, today we'll be only looking at and focusing on the Baganda and Bunyoro tribe. So, according to the Baganda and Bunyoro communities, marriage is a sacred ritual which is given significant importance and also attention to it within these communities. Marriages in the here can be polygamous and also monogamous, and according to Amon 2020, it is considered legal there. Besides that, according to Bunyoro Kitoro Kingdom 2020, traditional marriages traditional marriage traditions are usually and commonly followed by either Christian or Muslim marriages. Therefore, this shows how marriage is defined and also practiced in Uganda. So thank you. That's all from me. And now I'll be passing on to the next presenter, Alamelu, to present on the traditions in these two cultures. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Now moving on to the marriage tradition, which looks at the culture of St. Thomas Christian culture as well as the Ugandan culture. As the St. Thomas culture in a debate is that for this, the bride, how this process actually start is that bride and the groom, and as well as their family, come to an understanding and give their blessings for the marriage to happen. And what happens is that after they have come to understanding, they go back to their priest, who actually is the person who actually guides this whole wedding ceremony after that. So they need to go and talk to the priest about this. And what happens next is that once they have already come to an understanding, and then they have also have reported to the priest, the bride and the groom must actually compulsorily must attend the premarital counseling classes. It's a must, and without that, a wedding is not possible. And then for the engagement, what happens is the tradition that start with is engagement. It's actually a small gathering of between family members where they just introduce and then they bond among one another. And then what happens on the day of marriage is that the first thing that happens is the first part of the blessing, which actually starts with the ring, which is called actually the engagement. The first engagement that happens is a small gathering between family members. It's just an engagement, which is an unofficial one. But then on the one that happens on the day of the wedding is the real engagement, where for this culture, they exchange ring, where the priest is the one who puts the ring in the to the fingers of bride as well as the groom. Because normally we usually see like Christian different cultures where they just exchange a ring among bride and groom. But in this culture specifically, the priest is the one who places the ring to the fingers of both bride and the groom. This actually symbolizes Christ who brings the bride and groom together. It's like a belief for them. And then the second thing that happens is that they have this blessing of the crown. It's which is actually known as the end process of the marriage, where a gold chain is used to crown, and then it symbolizes the righteous and joy. And then for this gold chain, right, what happens is that it's only crowned to the person only once in their lifetime to the bride. But if the bride is getting remarried, it's not done. It's only done once in their lifetime. And then actually this and then the priest or the pastor holds both of their hands and put them together, and that symbolizes the end of the wedding. But then due to a lot of adaptation, it continue on, where there's an adaptation in relation to tying of minu is a kind of like a tali, which actually comes which is actually made with engraved Christ symbol, and then it's hold together with a few threads of this mantra kodi. Mantra kodi is actually a sari, which is actually bought by the groom to the bride, where they actually take out threads and then they tie it together, where the groom actually ties it to the bride, and then this um, groom's side, it's either his sister will actually help him tie it or as well. This symbolizes that she's accepted into the family and she's a family member. But then for another one is that this manja kodi, which is actually a sari, they actually use it to cover the head of the bride. And then they also have introduced this dowry system, where marriage gifts are given by the bride side to the groom side. But then this wasn't really in the starting, but then due to adaptation, and this adaptation is all done based on the following of Indian culture. And then now moving on to the next, we move on to the Ugandan culture, which looks at the Ugandan culture at the at the main place, where they actually start with engagement, where the groom actually proposes and then the woman actually agrees, and then that's where they actually inform her parents. And then this Sengha is actually the father sister who plays a really vital role in this marriage ceremony, where she's actually said to be responsible for the whole ceremony, and she is the one who actually get the bride to be ready to be get married. She does a lot of stuff. And then after that, what happens is that they have this ceremony called visiting Okyala, which is where the groom visits the bride and asks the hand in marriage, and where the parents of the bride actually, if they agree, the groom actually goes and asks the hand in marriage from the parents of the bride. And once they have come to agreement, they have actually served a food called olomba, which is actually wrapped in banana leaf and is served by the sengha, which is actually cooked by sengha and served to the groom side. And then they also discuss on the details of marriage as well as bride price. They have this bride price, which is known as mutvalo. Mutvalo is the name. This actually symbolizes that the groom is ready to get married and he's actually financially stable. And what happens next is that's the end for the uh, visiting ceremony. And now, which is the introduction ceremony, is actually the marriage ceremony in a circumstances where it's actually starts with bride. She introduces her groom to everyone who is there, actually the family members and all. And the bride price is actually given on that day, where which one they agreed in the visiting period is given on this day. It's actually to show that he has the desire to marry. And then as an exchange thing, where this is actually based on Ugandan culture, they have this hospital nature where they actually return. When someone gives them something, they return. And for this thing, the bride actually gives a gift, which is known as aklaba numbupala, to actually given as a hospital nature. And then what happens is the bride and the groom, they follow. That's actually the ending of the traditional wedding. But then, due to adaptation, they have this wedding ceremony according to on the culture they follow. If they follow like Christian, Western Christian, or if they follow like traditional Christian, they get married in that way. And then now, that's all for the Ugandan culture. And then now we look at the costume that's been worn by the bride and groom of both Ugandan culture as well as this, as well as the Saint Thomas Christian culture. For this Ugandan culture, the bride wears gomasi and groom wears kanzu, which are actually traditional clothes. And then this for this Christian culture, the bride wears the chatamundu, which is like a Syrian sari, and the groom, he actually wears a mundu, which is known as a shawl. And these are the example of pictures on the costumes. And with that, that's all from me. And thank you. And then the stereotypes and values will be presented by Filia. Thank you.
Thank you, Alamelo. So now I'll be presenting on the values and stereotypes in marriage. So in order to understand the values of the culture, we utilize Hofstede's theory of cultural dimension, specifically the individualistic, collectivistic dimension and the masculinity versus femininity dimension. Also, stereotypes are identified through this. So on marriage and relationships. So individualistic cultures basically prioritize relationships between family members, and this is as stated by Hofstede, as cited in Fakir in 2018. And in collectivistic cultures, individuals commonly identify with the community in which they belong to. So now that the marriage traditions of the St. Thomas Christian and the Ugandan culture has been presented, it is reasonable to state that both these cultures are indeed collectivist in nature, and this is also supported by Hofstede's insight in 2021 and Rarick in 2013. So let's see what is exactly emphasized by these collectivist cultures. So, firstly, of um, uh, in terms of the relationship, where the relationships within the community and relationships within the community is basically given significance, importance to, and harmony between the relationships, commitment to family, respect for the elders is very much valued in collectivist cultures. And this is also supported by Khalili in 2013. So, how exactly does this apply to these two cultures? So this can actually be seen in their traditions. So in the Ugandan culture, the Okukyala and the Opanjula ceremonies, that is, the visiting and introduction ceremonies, gives importance to the family and community of the bride and groom. And this can also be seen when the groom proposes to the bride for marriage. The groom must seek permission and fulfill the conditions of the bride's family in order to be able to marry his bride. While in the St. Thomas Christian culture, um, marriage banns are announced at the church before the wedding. Um, and this is indeed to ensure that there is no objection from the community, and if there is, then it should be communicated to the priest before the marriage. So, and another instance is in the practice of dakshina, which is indeed a sign of respect for elders, and this is also mentioned earlier by Alamil. And as such, all these further re emphasize the fact that these cultures are indeed collectivist in nature rather than individualistic. Next, in terms of the masculinity and femininity dimension, in masculine cultures, men are to be tough, assertive, successful in terms of wealth, and responsible, while women are to be modest, tender, and focused on the quality of life. This is as stated by Hofstede, as cited in Fakir 2018. And meanwhile, in feminist cultures, um, rather than separating the roles of man and woman, similar expectations are placed on both men and women. So, in terms of the cultures explored in this topic, St. Thomas Christian and Ugandan culture. So, according to Korean 2021 and also Landy 2018, men are considered to be the sole breadwinners of the family, while women are to take care of the family at home. So, this is the perception held by both the cultures explored here, and it it suggests that both these cultures fall under the dimension of masculine cultures rather than feminine cultures. So it is from this that we now derive the stereotypes that exist in marriage relationships. So from the explanations just now, it is the stereotype that has basically been identified is in terms of gender role-based stereotyping patterns that exist in marriage relationships in both the cultures. It is similar. So, and that can explain the differences in terms of roles for the men and women in masculine cultures. And however, it should be noted that this is very much prominent in the past. At present times, more women are beginning to voice out and oppose gender stereotypical rules. And this is also supported by Korean 2021 and Ensima et al. In 2018. So in the present times, more people are voicing out against the gender role-based stereotype patterns that exist within cultures, not just limited to these two cultures, but also other cultures. More people are against uh, gender role-based stereotyping patterns, and and this thereby concludes with the subtopic of values and stereotypes in marriage. So, in conclusion of this presentation, um, basically the similarities that can be observed within these two cultures are mainly in terms of values and stereotypes of the culture. So, more similarities are observed in terms of the values and stereotypes. However, in terms of differences, the main things are basically in terms of how marriage is defined by St. Thomas Christian culture, how marriage is defined by the Ugandan culture, and how marriage ceremonies are conducted, and the traditional wear for each of these cultures when it comes to marriage ceremonies. And through the exploration of both these cultures, it has enabled us to realize the importance of understanding different cultures It enabled us to also value, respect, and acknowledge the differences of individuals from various cultural backgrounds. In short, the whole experience was reflective and meaningful, and these are our references. That's all from us. Thank you.